Namaskar, Vivekji. Tell us about why you got involved with Ananda Marga and got initiated. When and where did this all start?
Well, it's just Baba's grace that I got initiated, and I guess the story starts back when my first spiritual experience. It would have been I was in primary school, probably fourth or fifth grade, and I was an altar boy, and at the altar I was challenged learning the Latin, and the priest that was there was Monsignor Monahan, and he was troubled because I didn't know my Latin very well, and he bursted out very loudly, "You don't know your Latin, boy." And my grandmother and aunts were in the front row, and I should have been absolutely mortified, but at the time I was just completely I experienced something I never ever experienced in my life. I was psychically, I was just transported to a place that that I'd never been before, and I felt extremely elated, and his words had no effect on me at all. I was just absorbed in this bliss. Never before, I think it was many years before I experienced anything like that again. Finished high school, Vietnam War was happening, I was conscripted, and I spent 4 years in the American Navy on a submarine. And at that time, spirituality was something that was, I never had any, I had like a longing for it, but I was unable to connect with the opportunity to present itself anyway. And I found myself in Bangkok. This was after being discharged from the military and starting university, and the college that I was going to, I think my major was social work, and I was very disillusioned with what was happening in the States, and I bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok, and I found that my money ran out. I was completely dependent on Baba, but I hadn't experienced that I haven't touched base with him yet. I had trouble getting a visa because with little money, you had to leave the country, and it was a difficult situation. I did meet someone who was living with an acharya in Bangkok, and I did go to that, which was a Jagati, and Dada Pranakrishananda was the acharya at that time, and he gave me Namamatra, and but he also gave me an amazing experience where I could sit on this couch with him, and the things he explained to me were something that I wanted to hear for a very long time, and it was not material. It was very mind expanding, and he was giving me the basis of what Ananda Marga was, and he didn't tell me that Baba was in jail, and he was imprisoned, and his a lot of the followers are also being hunted down, and so the organization was going through all of this turmoil, and he didn't let me know that. He probably was afraid that I would bail out, and it wasn't until, well, he told me to meditate 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, and which I did. After 1 week, I started smoking cigarettes in the Navy. And after I got out of the Navy, I tried many times and many different, anything to stop smoking, but it didn't work. After 1 week, I realized I wasn't smoking anymore. And this was another indication that this is something I really wanted more of. I was able to make my way down through Malaysia, Singapore, and when I got to Singapore, I met another Acharya there, and he pulled out this magazine from the Philippines called the Maharlika Times. And in that magazine, there was a photograph of someone who had just self-immolated. And there was a story about Baba and the organization. And all of this was just completely new to me. And when it was explained to me what is happening, I immediately, it was just confirmed in my mind that this is what I want. This is what I want to work my. These ideals are something that are very high. So I continued with the meditation, and I became more. I wanted to learn asanas and the changing of my diet, and I did get a ticket to go to Australia. It was the closest place I could go to work. And when I landed in Australia, I went. There was a small Jagati which Kapil and Karuna had started, and I stayed there, and I met. There was a fair few Margis there. Actually, Narda, that's where I met you for the very first time. You had a little blue motorbike and working as a boilermaker. And after probably about 8-9 months in the Jagati, the SS Dada, which is Abhidevananda was there, acting SS, and he was starting a training center for LFTs. And Narada and about maybe 10 or 12 other brothers and sisters went to that training, and I stayed in the Jagati and kept it going until 2 LFTs returned. When they did, I then went to Sydney to attend the second LFT session. And in that time, Dada Abhidevananda said he needed someone to do some work in India. And I was planning on going to training in India to become a whole-timer. And he said there's one stipulation, that you come back and you work in the sector for at least 3 months. I said that's fine. And with a possibility of seeing Baba in prison. And I did get to India, and actually I went to Calcutta first. Brahmananda said, I need you to do some work here. He wanted some tables and chairs and whatever made in the room that they use for cooking and also for dining. And I did that, and after spending some, I think probably over a week there, my visa was running up, my flight was coming up, so I had to leave. And so the chance of seeing Baba in jail was not looking very well. It was probably 2 days before I was supposed to leave. Dada said, we're going to do some pachar, and we're going to go to another town, which is probably 3 or 4 hours away. And when we got there, after we did the pachar and showed some Baba movies, Dada said, look, you can go to see Baba in jail. I've notified the in charge there, so everything should be set up. And the train was leaving at that time in about a half an hour. I had got to the train station just in time, arrived in Patna, and Dada Keshwananda was there. He was DS at that time. And I explained to him what I wanted to see Baba in jail. And he said, I have no knowledge of this, and no one's informed me. There's already 3 daughters. Only 3 daughters can come, and they won't take 4 people. I said, Dada, I explained that you should have received the letter, and he says, do you know 16 points? I said, yes, and he asked me to go through them. And the one thing I hadn't done was to convert a sympathizer. And so he asked me to go on the street and to do that. So which I did, and then after that he said, okay, well look, you can't come. Look at your clothes. My knees were torn, and my pants. I had just come off the train. And so the LFTs went into the alert room, tried to find some clothing. They were unable to, and so he said, we're going now to the jail. So the rickshaws were out in front. We all hopped down, got to the jail, and at the jail, the Bangkok jail is this very run-down looking building, and 2 main doors in the front are just massive steel, and there's a small section which opens up to a small door. And we arrived, we banged on the doors, and the daughters said what their purpose was, and we were told to wait. There was one tree in front of the jail, and we all sat around that doing sadhana. And after maybe an hour or so, the steel doors rattled, and they were motioned to come. So we ran over, and the Dada Keshwananda and the other 2 daughters arrived at the door, and I was at the back. And one by one, they stepped through the door. And when it came to me, his arm came out and stopped me. He said, no. And so the door shut, and I went back to the tree and sat down, and I was really quite disturbed that I missed this opportunity. And I accepted that I got this close, and I'm happy with that. And so I sat and I was doing sadhana. After another hour or so, heard the door rattle again, and it wasn't the Keshavananda and the other daughters returning, it was the same guard, and he motioned me to come to the door. So I ran over, and he let me come in. And I was directed to the main office, and inside were the CBI agents, and they wanted to interview me and take my passport and to record it so I could be blacklisted, because any time that they could find that there'd be a foreigner, non-Indian, who was a devotee, they would deport them, and so that would be the end of the trip. I was interviewed for about maybe half an hour or so, and then finally I was told to leave. And as I followed this guard, I thought that by this time, Dada would have already been to see Baba. And I was led into another room, and in this room was Dada Keshwananda and the other Dadas. And as soon as I joined them, the guards opened up another door, and we walked out into the jail, into the center of the prison, and there was this filled with hundreds and hundreds of prisoners. And they were all, to just get to this crowd, this maze, it was very difficult. We finally made our way to Baba's jail cell. It was on the ground level, and it was like a small, there were small little buildings in the center of the prison yard, and they merged into one of the side walls. Baba was in the very first one. As we walked around the back of the cell, there was a curtain hanging in a little courtyard that was just a small brick wall which we stepped through, and the guards in the front opened the curtain, and the Dadas went in one by one, and then there was a few guards behind me. And when I got inside the jail cell, the first thing I knew, it was extremely dark, and it was so bright outside, my eyes were unaccustomed, I couldn't see. But what I could see from the light coming in from the door was some Dada's feet, and so that meant that he was doing Sastam Pranam, which meant that Baba was close by. So I immediately laid down Satsam Pranam, and for a few, probably maybe 20 seconds, then I heard Dada Keshwananda whispering, talking softly. And I raised my head up, and I saw Dada Keshwananda leaning, bending over to a bed cot, and then I saw Baba's form. While I was sitting outside the jail cell, I kept thinking and ideating about Baba's physical form. What would it be like? He had been fasting now for 536 days, and I thought that his body would just be it would be, I just didn't know what it would be like. And that's what I had in my mind all the time. And now that I'm inside the jail cell, I can see that Baba is lying on his side and talking to Dada. And Dada is, there's another Dada who is, I see now, he's at Baba's head, and it's Atulanandaji. And Atulananda is massaging Baba's temples very, very softly. And he has tears running down his cheeks. And the other two Dadas wanting to massage Baba. This evidently was the normal protocol, that you get to massage Baba's face, or Baba's feet, or his legs. And so as they were moving toward Baba to do this, Dada Atulananda motioned and said, no, you can't touch Baba. Baba is experiencing immense amount of pain, and just to touch him is, the only thing you can do is just massage his feet, which they did. And as they started doing that, I went to Baba's feet, and I also started massaging his feet. I found that his feet were very, very, very soft, and again my mind went to, this is Baba's body. How can this be? And then the guard would say, "Cello, cello," and then so Dada Keshwananda called one of the other workers, And these workers were dressed in white. They were unable to wear the uniform, or else they would be arrested and put in jail. I then was able to have more space to massage Baba's feet. And again, the guards would say, "Chalo, chalo, chalo." And so the other daughter went to Baba to speak with Baba. And as they were doing that, I thought that I wouldn't have very much time with Baba at all, because everything is moving at a very, very fast pace. And again, Dada Keshwananda called. He said, "Vivek, come." And so I went to Baba's, at his side. I was kneeling. And Baba was lying on his right side, and he had his arm under his head. He first asked me my name. And I said, "Baba, my name is Vivek." He said, "And what is the meaning of Vivek?" I said, "Baba, it means discrimination." And he said, "Spiritual discrimination." I said, "Yes, Baba." And the next thing Baba says was, "You see this body. You see what it is. There was so much more, my son. There was so much more." And then I realized what he was saying. And I'm just, I've only started meditating probably some months before, and spiritually, I have not a great, a lot of experience, and all of this is so new to me. And Baba said there is going to be much competition throughout the world, and I want Australia to come out on top. And Baba evidently was referring to, I think, a 16 points competition. And Baba said, he asked me a question. He said, "What is the difference between an ideal man and God?" And I thought, the first thing that popped into my mind was I should have stayed at the LFT training longer rather than leaving and coming so quickly to India. I could have learned something, some intellectual, this answer that Baba wanted. And Baba was quiet, and he was waiting for me to respond. And I couldn't answer him. I didn't know what this difference was. Baba then opened his eyes, and when he did, this is the first time that his eyes were open. He always had his eyes closed while he was talking, and there was blackness under both eyes. It was from the fasting that had been going on for so long, and his personal doctor was saying that he really had to start taking some food because his organs would be starting to collapse. And when he opened his eyes and he looked at me, I completely lost. I was just completely disorientated as far as where I am and what's happening, and I felt this amazing feeling of spiritual, of this bliss that I once touched a long time ago when I was an altar boy. And I then, Baba then closed his eyes, and I tried to recollect myself, because I wanted to remember what was going on after I left the jail cell, and by this time the guards were they knew I was the last one to see Baba, and so they started barking, and it was almost like if you ever had geese that were used for watchdogs, and the noise they make, and as soon as one starts, and and it was like just like that. All of a sudden, all of these guards started to bark, Cello, and push and shove, and then all the others ran back to Baba to say namaskar to him, and at that time I found myself being ushered out the door with this guard, and then I realized I didn't say goodbye to Baba. I went around this guard, and I could only get almost to the foot of his bed, and he wouldn't let me go any further. And I leaned over, and I said my namaskar to Baba. And I said, "Thank you for letting me come inside your jail, Baba." And as I closed my eyes to do namaskar, the next thing I realized, Baba is in front of me. He's reaching his arms out, and he takes my head, and he pulls my head close to him, and he says, "You be an ideal man. You be a great man. You be an ideal man." I said, "Yes, Baba." And when that happened, the guard stopped. There was complete silence in the room. Nobody moved. It was like Baba is in control, and the guards respected that. When I turned to leave, Dada Keshwananda came, and he took my hand, and he said, "Baba liked you very much. He doesn't do this is unusual." And I've never ever actually told anybody that. This is the first time. And probably the reason why is that I thought that there's a lot of people that haven't had this opportunity to be with Baba. A lot of sisters, and also my wife that would not have that opportunity, and I just felt like it's I didn't feel actually worthy of so much grace that he can give, and the understanding that Baba has to know that where I've come from, what I've been before, and where I'm going, he has that, and that understanding, and his ability to pass that on to devotees is such a grace. After that, I got outside the jail cell and made our way back into the Jagrati, and that was my very first experience of seeing Baba. I also had PC with Baba, and at that time it was a fair few people wanting to have PC with Baba. We were all lined up, and it was one worker at the door, and opened up the door, and more or less gave you a bit of a shove inside, and the door was closed, and then you were alone with Baba. Baba's sitting on this couch, and the first thing he said was, "Come, and your name, and the meaning of that name, what region and what work, which dit is it, And what is your age? Then he said, sit back. I must look at your lower portion, and all of you. Yes, that's right. Take proper position. You have done some things, yes, very good things. But you also have done some bad things. Very bad. Now, we have some good things, and we have some bad things. If other people could see what I could see, would they respect you? How can we make it better? Atonement? Do you think you need some punishment? Come closer, so that my short stick can reach you. Now, how many? 20? 40? And I said, 35. Oh, 35. And Baba said, 17 on this side, or 18 on that side? Or 35 all on the same side? Will you cry? Are you sure? I said, of course, Baba, I won't cry. You're such a little boy, and my stick is so big. Then he said, place your hands on your chest. Yes, and open your shirt. Now repeat this oath after me. The welfare of the whole cosmos, that is yours. Treat sisters with more dignity. And of course, 16 points, Jama and Niyama. Now, come closer, closer. So you think no one can see you. Does Baba hate you a little bit or a lot? Does Baba love my little Vivek? A little or a lot? And my little boy Vivek, does he hate or love Baba? I said, Baba, I love you so much. He said, how much? I said, Baba, so much. As I was leaving, I got to the door, and then I remembered Gautami, my wife. She had something to ask Baba, but she couldn't do it personally. I turned around and I said, Baba. Baba looked up. I said, Baba, Gautami is enjoying your sadhana very much. Baba did namaskar and he said, I am enjoying it even more. Then I departed. Microvita sadhana. This was in the late 80s. It was 87. And Baba had started giving Microvita sadhana. And I and probably 5 or 6 other brothers from Suva sector went. And it was one of those things where you had to see Baba after you have had full bath. So we would try to gauge it so that after we had our bath, we would be at the time that Baba would be wanting to see us, which was quite difficult. Finally, Baba said, we were all waiting in the darshan room, and one daughter came in and said, Vivek, come. And I went up to up the stairs, and there was no Baba, no daughter to push me in. And I went in, and Baba was sitting on his couch. And he said, come. He said, sit. And I never had Dhammasamiksha at that time, when he was giving it. And a lot of Suva Sakta brothers went in India at that time, and I had missed out on it. And Dada spent the first few minutes talking about sadhana, and with his stick he was pointing at different chakras, and he talked about he did an explanation of Virabai Mudra, and when he was explaining it, he said the position of the hands. He said the right hand is raised, and I thought he was wanting me to raise my hand, which I did, and then the left hand is placed in a downward position, and after a few seconds, Baba, he looked at me. He said, "Oh, no." He said, "No, you don't do that." He said, "I do that." He said, I felt like I made a little bit of a foobar, and then Baba went on to teach Microvita sadhana, and it was maybe a few hours after. And then when leaving, Baba said, "Vivek, now, any spare time you have, you always do your sadhana." And he said, when you do your sadhana, he said, you sit like this. He says, not like this. And he went and did the mudras. And now, when you go downstairs, he said, there'll be many people who want to gossip. And will you go down and gossip? I said, no, Baba, I will do sadhana. He says, very good, very good. And that was my Microvita sadhana.